Hello, Steve Wilson from Grand Junction, Colorado. I want to talk to you about one of the most interesting subjects in the world that we just take for granted, and that's where we get our energy from. Behind me, you can see the structure of what we call the mitochondria, which is the engine of the cell. And in this little instrument, all at once, we develop 95% of the energy of the body. Each and every cell has mitochondria. In fact, it might be to your surprise that a common old everyday skin cell has up to 1,000 of them in it. And a heart cell has upwards to 5,000 mitochondria. And in the wheel that you're looking at behind me, this little paddle that kind of looks like a water wheel rotates through there at the rate of 200 RPM, 200 circulations per second. And in that process, it turns out ATP. And that's the energy that we really want to discuss, and we really want to understand that that's what makes your body function. Nothing else unless you're using stimulants. And the price that we pay for using stimulants is beyond description, and we will get into that in a later date. But I want to give you some of the references material that you might be able to look up. First of all, I want to talk about Dr. Luis Ignario. He's a professor of pharmacology at UCLA, and he was the one that won the Nobel Prize, he and his team, for the discovery of nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a very, very, very important byproduct of ATP in that it causes a vasodilation. In other words, we're saying that we can get the arteries, capillaries, and all of the cells in your body to expand, get bigger and smaller. And by doing that, we can move blood at a much better rate, and oxygen. And without oxygen and nutrients, you cannot make ATP from a little thing called ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. What we're trying to do is inform you, without getting too technical, how energy is made. So along with that, there's a fabulous fellow. He's a cardiologist back east. His name is Dr. Stephen Sinatra. In writing in the Sinatra Solutions, you will find that is his report and UCLA's, and a gal by the name of Dr. Joanne Ingwall. She's a professor of medicine at Harvard. They're all saying the same thing, that ADP, without it, you cannot function. In fact, you see people that just sit down as they're going someplace trying to regain this thing called energy. Along with that, you're going to see a number of things from the Mayo Clinic. All of them are suggesting that if you circumvent the process of building ADP from nutrients, that you are short-circuiting your body, and you are really entertaining the concept of disease. So this is the story, that as we begin to build this energy, in fact, the numbers are really quite breathtaking. If you're dealing with just the old heart, which is where we want to target, the heart has only room for 700 milligrams of ATP at any one time. So if you have a heart rate of 60 beats per minute, then you have enough ATP to run your heart for 10 seconds. So all at once, we begin to see this wonderful thing called energy turnover. So to put some numbers to it, if you have an intake of some 2,500 calories per day, that will produce 400 pounds of ATP in one 24-hour period. So you can see the importance of energy turnover, and the most important elements that you have in your body to do this are enzymes CoQ10, which are produced in the body, but as you age, you produce less of them. So along with that, you have carnitine, and surprisingly, there's a little thing called D-ribose, which is the energy for the heart. We want to put that together in a package because people are not getting enough of it simply because of their eating habits. And this is so important to you to understand where there is a lack of energy, there is the presence of disease, emotional and physical. And I think that most of us recognize that when we are tired, we are more susceptible to poor thinking, to disease encounters with a compromised immune system. And therefore, we can simply look very quickly at how we produce this energy. If you're using sugar and caffeine and stimulants from power drinks, you are incorporating and inviting certain diseases to come into play. As you can imagine, if you're going to utilize the adrenal glands, then all at once you take these adrenal glands, which are an intricate part of your immune system, to be compromised, subjecting you to a limited form of protection from disease. These are simple facts. Now, if we just continue to accept how energy is made, then suddenly you should accept the disease that follows it if you're using stimulants. So as we look at the two principal elements of what is necessary, which is fuel and oxygen. Now the fuel is going to come in a couple of sources. Obviously protein, obviously carbohydrates, and what most folks don't understand is this little thing called essential fats. So when you're eating carbohydrates, keep it in mind that a 170-pound person only has 7 grams of glucose or sugar in their blood at any one time. If you're using carbohydrates or a power drink that's containing 14, 15, 20 grams of sugar, that goes someplace. And the body looks at it, stores it in the form of fat, and part of it goes through the pancreatic activity, and it comes back in the form of amyloid beta plaque, which begins to clog arteries, capillaries, and close off avenues to get nutrients into the brain, beginning to play into your disease. And then we call it dementia. We call it the aging process. We have a number of ways of covering the fact that it's our fault, if you will, for the diets that we choose. ATP is found only in living items. So if you consume foods that are dead, highly processed, you will never, ever really feel good. Let me throw in this wonderful thing called frequencies. Foods have frequencies. Live foods have frequencies. If you're eating processed foods, they have a 0 frequency. So as we lower the frequency in our body, we invite disease to move in. So you, by your eating habits, will determine whether you're going to welcome or suppress disease coming into your body, along with the fatigue factor. So these are just parts of what we're trying to get across to you. The structure of the program that you're having back there is designed specifically to make you understand how ATP is made. So let's think about it for just a second. If we're spinning this paddle around on the inside of one mitochondria, and it's turning out some 3 to 4 molecules of ATP per spin, per molecule, then that means it's doing 200 revolutions per minute. You can imagine the amount of exhaust that's being created, or toxins. So it would make sense to put into your body the right nutrients to negate the toxins that are produced. Along with that, if you have no capability of getting this out of the cell, you have literally constipated your cell. And it's akin to going out and putting a potato into the exhaust of your car and seeing how it runs under those conditions. So you debilitate your very self by using this form of energy. Along with that, you've changed the pH of the blood, the pH of tissue. And as you begin to bring the tissues down into a acid mode, where there is acid, there's always fatigue, and there is always disease, because that's the environment that it lives in. So what we thought we would do is introduce you to not only the forms, the necessary elements in one can to build ATP, and that ATP is built within the cell, not outside. So you've got loaded up carnitine, which is a protein. And by the way, it is the vehicle that carries fats to the mitochondrial wall. And while we're talking about that, let me discuss efficiency for just a moment. When you use carbohydrates or sugar to build energy from, you can build 4 molecules of ATP per molecule of sugar. Protein, for 1 molecule of protein, you can produce 4 molecules of ATP. Think about this for a moment. With essential fats, you produce 129 molecules of ATP per molecule of fat. The efficiency goes through the ceiling. So our job is to eat the right kind of fats, lower the amount of sugar in the blood, because what we want to do is trigger a little thing called leptin, is a hormone that turns on fat, which produces all this, and turn it into energy. And in doing so, you will begin to lose weight, you'll have more energy, you will eat less, but we have to control a couple other hormones that are found in the system. They're called adiponectin and ghrelin, and these are your hunger, satiety hormones. So if we can control those, you've got plenty of energy, because most of us in the nation are overweight. We are out of balance, physically out of balance. And where there's out of balance, there's a lack of safety, if you will. Many seniors are very concerned about that. Along with that, their memory seems to go into the tank, simply because we cannot get oxygen to the brain. So if we begin to understand the vasodilation that's produced from nitric oxide, which is a byproduct of building ATP, and we also get a very interesting thing called D-ribose, which is shunted off and it circulates within the cell and it turns into the fuel of the cell. So as we read according to the studies that I ran before you, those 3 ingredients, D-ribose, CoQ10, and carnitine, are the things that produce health heart. So as we age and we don't eat the right foods to produce these elements, it would make sense. So that's why we built our product called Nefesh. It's a Nefesh product, which means the passion of the body is in the blood. So we want to give to you this sort of a product that gives you energy, gives you endurance, less time down. In fact, it will increase your immune system, and that becomes critical.